Grand jury subpoenas sent to the Federal Reserve have intensified a political and legal battle over the central bank's independence. After President Donald Trump's renewed criticism of Chair Jerome Powell over the cost of renovating the Fed's headquarters, Columbia law professor Catherine Judge said the deeper risk is not a criminal case against Powell, but the long-term damage to the Fed as an independent institution and to the confidence in the U.S. monetary policy.
So the real concern here is the Federal Reserve as an institution that really fought for its independence, that took time to be able to find its independence, and that Congress specifically designed to be independent from the president, instead over time just becomes another tool of the president in ways that have adverse ramifications for the dollar, for treasury markets, for future prospects for price stability.
The dispute centers on the renovation of the Fed's main building, which Trump raised publicly during the tour of the site with Powell and Senator Tim Scott last year, asking whether further cost overruns were expected.
And a subpoena really is just a request for information, but it's a request for information where you are legally obliged to provide the requested information. So usually a challenge with a subpoena is not just the request for information, but a subpoena is often an indication of an investigation. And so it's what it signals and what the information might be used for that oftentimes makes a subpoena or the receipt of a subpoena troubling.
Reports of subpoenas to the central bank have sharpened concerns that the issue is moving beyond construction costs into border confrontation between the White House and the Fed. Trump and Powell were later seen leaving the site together, but tensions have continued to escalate since. Judge said subpoenas are legally binding demands for information and often signal a formal investigation, making their use against the central bank particularly troubling.
Nobody thinks that Chair Powell willfully misled Congress, as would be required for the criminal indictment to really come through and come to fruition. The real concern here is that you're using levers that are meant to be used solely for purposes of true criminal activity and instead being used for political ends.
Renovation work continues at the Federal Reserve complex in Washington, where scaffolding and construction crews surround the building. Judge said there was no serious belief that Powell deliberately misled Congress, but warned that criminal law tools are being used for political pressure rather than genuine law enforcement. Former Federal Reserve chairs Ben Bernanke, Alan Greenspan, and Janet Yellen issued a joint statement warning the prosecutorial attacks of the Fed could undermine price stability, financial markets, and trust in the dollar. Their names were among dozens of prominent signatories backing the warning. Judge said the subpoenas have triggered rare public resistance, including from members of Congress who normally support Trump, raising the political stakes for the administration.
So in response to this subpoena, we got the clearest statement that we have gotten yet from Chair Powell regarding the way this administration's actions threaten the long-term independence and integrity of the Federal Reserve. And so that really increases the stakes. We have also seen that Congress, which has generally been very accommodative of President Trump, a number of members of Congress who really care about Fed independence speaking out against this particular development. In particular, Senator Thom Tillis, a Republican who is on the banking committee, has expressed significant concerns about this development and has vowed not to move forward with the nomination hearings for Powell's successor as chair until this matter is resolved. So part of what we're seeing here is this might actually trigger backlash that really undermines President Trump's ability to pursue his agenda as he had hoped.
Republican Senators Tom Till and Lisa Murkowski wrote on social media that the investigation threatens both the credibility of the Justice Department and the independence of the Federal Reserve, vowing to block future Fed nominations until the issue is resolved. Trump has said renovations could exceed $4 billion and has floated filing what he calls a gross incompetence lawsuit against Powell.
It's going to end up costing more than $4 billion. $4 billion. It's the highest price of construction. Again, Democrats, highest price of construction per square foot in the history of the world. There's never been. Gorgeous monuments are built for a much smaller price. So we're thinking about bringing a gross incompetence, what's called gross incompetence lawsuit. It's gross incompetence against Powell.
Judge said subpoenas are part of a wider pattern on pressure on the Fed, including past threats to fire or demote Powell and attempts to remove Governor Lisa Cook, arguing the goal is to influence interest rate policy.
Part of what makes this so important is that it's part of a broader campaign that we have seen from President Trump since he assumed the presidency for the second time. If this was an isolated incident, the implications would be quite different. Instead, what we've seen are repeated attacks against Chair Powell, threats to potentially try to fire or demote Chair Powell. We have seen the attempt to fire Governor Lisa Cook based on allegations of mortgage fraud. And so this comes on top of all of that and also shapes, as a practical matter, how we should understand all of those other developments. Because what we're really seeing at this point is clear evidence that each of these steps is not about mortgage fraud or about congressional oversight. It's about the ability of the president to try to put pressure on the Fed to further his preferred agenda, and the pretextual nature of each of these actions is evident when they are viewed in context.
Analysts warned that if the central bank is seen as politically controlled, the fallout could extend far beyond Washington, weakening confidence in US markets, government debt, and the dollar itself.